Okay, so this is lesson 7 of the intermediate music theory class. So for today's agenda, we're going to do the types of cadences. There's many types, so that's going to take a while. And then we're going to start learning about the different eras of music. Today we're going to do part 1, since there's 4 eras. And the first era you may have heard of, it's called the Baroque era. So we're going to look a bit into that. It's like musical history, and it's good to know, especially if you're playing like a music from that time period. It's very helpful to know the different aspects of that period. Then we're going to do a listening exercise, and then we're going to go on to vocab and homework. Okay, so let's learn cadences first. Okay, first of all, a show of hands. Who has learned about cadences already? Okay, good. Dylan? A little bit? Okay, that's fine. We're going to learn it again today anyways. Sorry, okay. Okay, sorry. So a cadence is a closing or ending of a musical phrase made up of a combination of chords. And there are many different types of cadences in music. So what they mean by a combination of chords is, if you remember our lesson about scale degrees, we would name every note in the scale with a Roman numeral. So like in C major, C would be the first note, D would be the second note, E would be the third note, and so on. And then these different types of cadences, they put together different combinations of those chords or numbers for different types of cadences. So the first type of cadence we're going to learn about is called an authentic cadence. So an authentic cadence is made up of a chord from the fifth note of a scale and then a chord from the first note of a scale. And it can be represented by the Roman numerals 5, 1, because you're doing the fifth note of a scale back to the first one. So that's the order you would write it. And remember, the order must be from 5 to 1 and not 1 to 5, because 1 to 5 is a different one. So just remember that an authentic one means 5 to 1. And if we look at an example here, this is a C major authentic cadence. The fifth note of C major is G, if you count all the way up, C, D, E, F, G. So we build a chord based on the note G. So we get a G major chord, and then followed by a C major chord, because, well, C is the first note of C major, obviously. So it's G to C. Okay, so yes or no, type it in the chat. Is this an authentic cadence? And remember, authentic means 5 to 1. So if you see that in the circle, then type yes. If you don't, then type no. Okay, good job for the people who answered. Yes, this is an authentic cadence. If we look at the last slide, remember, an authentic cadence means that it goes from 5 to 1. So just, I guess if it helps you remember, just link those words together, authentic and 5 to 1. And here in the circle, you see a 5 to a 1. I guess if this might be more difficult if you didn't memorize like what the Roman numerals mean. So I guess if that can help you, then try doing that. But remember, an authentic cadence is 5 to 1, or maybe you can remember like VI, if that helps. But yeah, this is an authentic cadence. Okay, now we're gonna find the authentic cadence, and we're gonna do this together since it's our first time. So remember, authentic is 5 to 1, but we don't know what 5 or 1 is, like which notes they represent, until we find the key of the piece. So can anyone tell me what key this piece is in? Say it out loud or type it in the chat.
G.
Very good, it's G major. Okay, so what is the fifth note of G major? That's the 5 we're looking for. What would the fifth note of G major be?
Maybe D?
Very good, it is D. If you count up G, A, B, D, C. Wait, That's not right. G, A, B, C, D. Sorry. Okay. Yes, it is D. And then what's the first note of G major?
G, lol.
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking for a D major chord to a G major chord. And then do you see that anywhere here? If you guys know how to annotate, you can draw a circle. Okay, Dylan, where do you?
I see a DG here.
That's not what I meant. Okay, you have to look for two different chords, not just like the interval. Because if we look back at this slide, there's two chords. You can't just look at two notes. That's called an interval. We're looking at cadences now. They're different things.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't see it.
Okay, let's look for pieces first. Can anyone find a G major chord for the 1? Then maybe we can look for the 5 before it. Good, very good. That is a G major chord, but we don't see any notes before it, so that couldn't possibly be part of the authentic cadence. So let's try to find another one. Very good. So that is a G major chord. There's G and B, and we can assume it's in G major because it's in G major. And then if we look at the chord before that, is that a D major chord? You could type yes or no. Okay, yes, Dylan is correct. This is a D major chord. You might be kind of confused because there's a C here, but we're going to learn that later. That's called a dominant seventh, but that doesn't matter. It's still a D major chord because we have D, F sharp, and A. So now that we found a D major chord and a G major chord, we can label this one as 1 because it's in G major. And then this is a D major chord. And since D is the 5th note, exactly, it's a 5. And then now we have 5 to 1. So that is the authentic cadence. I'm going to clear these now because I think the answer circles it for you. Yeah, there it is. Okay. And that's the label you would put on a test or just to help you. Okay, the next type of cadence, there's not only one type, there's many different combinations. So another type of cadence is called a plagal cadence, where the chord progression is 4 to 1 instead of 5 to 1. So that means we would use the chord from the 4th note of a scale, followed by the chord from the 1st note of the scale. So let's look at another example of a C major cadence, but this time it's plagal. Sorry, I don't know why my voice is like that. Okay, so for a plagal cadence, since it's 4 to 1, we have the 4th note of C major, which is F. If you count up, it's C, D, E, F. That's the 4th note, which means that we would have an F major chord followed by a C major chord. So as you can see here, there is an F major chord. You have F, A, and F here. And then it's back to C major. So it's C, E, and G. And remember, this is the same as the other one. It can only go from 4 to 1, not 1 to 4. Okay, so remember, authentic is 5 to 1 and plagal is 4 to 1. So let's find the cadence in these couple of chords. And a cadence can only have 2 chords, so if you don't see a 5 to 1 or a 4 to 1, just ignore those chords. So for this one, do you see an authentic cadence or a plagal cadence?
Plagal.
Very good, both of you. This is plagal. So as long as the last 2 chords are 4 to 1, then it's plagal. You can ignore all of these things. Good job. Okay, this one is in C major and it's labeled for you. So is this one authentic or plagal?
Authentic.
Very good. Because it's 5 to 1, this one is authentic. think this is the last one. Okay, there's 5 chords this time, but remember, we're only looking for a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1. So do you see an authentic or a plagal cadence?
Authentic.
Very good. This is authentic. 5-to-1. And if you're wondering why learning these cadences is important, is because these cadences are literally everywhere in your music. If you look, you'll see all different types of cadences. So it's really good to know what's going on in your music. And an authentic cadence is the most common type of cadence. So try to remember this one the most. Okay, and I'll let Yifan teach this part.
Alright, so the 2 other types of cadences are the half cadence and deceptive cadence. The half cadence is any cadence that ends on a 5 chord. For example, a 1-to-5 chord is a half cadence, and so is a 4-to-5 chord. This type of cadence is called a half cadence because it does not end on a 1, so it sounds unfinished. So as you can see on these two examples, the last chord is a 5. And on the second example, it goes from a 2 chord to a 5 chord. So you just need to know that it ends on a 5. A deceptive cadence is a 5 to a, consists of a 5 chord followed by a 6 chord. Which means that you would use the chord from a fifth note of a scale followed by the chord of a 6th note of a scale. This type of cadence is called deceptive cadence because it seems as if the 5 chord will go back to 1, but it does not. So you can see below, the first chord is a 5 chord. And you may think that it will go back to a first 1, like a, what's it called? Authentic cadence, but it actually goes to a 6 chord. Okay, so with this example, you're going to tell if it's a half cadence or a deceptive cadence. So remember that number 1, a half cadence ends on a 5 chord, and number 2, a deceptive cadence starts on a 5 chord and does not end on a 1 chord. So, can anyone tell me what type of cadence this is?
Half.
Yeah, it is a half cadence. So it starts on a 1 and then it ends on a 5. Okay, so this example. Can anybody tell me what cadence this is?
Deceptive.
Yeah, deceptive cadence. It starts on a 5 and it goes to a 6. Instead of going back to 1, it goes to another chord. And this one, can anybody tell me if it's a half cadence or a deceptive cadence?
Deceptive.
Does everybody agree? Oh, okay. Okay, so it is a deceptive cadence because it starts on a 5. Instead of going to a 1 chord, it goes to anything else but a 1 chord. So last example we saw it went to a 6, this time it goes to a 2. Okay, so identify the following cadences as authentic, plagal, half, or deceptive. Can anybody tell if it is what type of cadences this thing is?
You guys can label it if it helps you figure it out.
Authentic.
Yeah, it is an authentic cadence. So first, as you can see, the first one is a C chord, and the C is F, G, A, B flat, C. It's the 5th note of an F major scale. and it goes back to the F, which is a 1 chord. Okay, the second one, it's also an F major. Can anybody tell me if it's an authentic, plagal, half, or deceptive?
Two.
Yeah, the deceptive. This is a deceptive because it starts on a C chord, which is the 5th note of the chord, and then it goes to a 4 chord, which makes it not an authentic cadence.
6.
And last but not least, what kind of cadence is the third measure?
A deceptive.
Okay, close. So first, let's look at the notes. What type of chord is the first one?
A 1I.
Yeah, it's a 1 chord. And then we can look at the second chord. What type of chord is this one? Remember that it's in either the first or second inversion.
First inversion.
Yeah, it's in the first inversion. So,
That's
sorry.
a D chord.
Yeah, if we were to move the D down
So this is
here,
like a half cadence, I guess?
yeah, it's a half cadence, which is 1 to a 5, which makes it a half cadence.
But we're going to go on to learn about the Baroque period now. I think in the music theory test, at some point, they will test you to see like which elements you know from music, such as like ornamentation and stuff. So this is good to know. And also it's just music history, so it's good to know. Okay, so the Baroque period is from 1600 to 1750. So pretty early. The Baroque period of music saw an expansion in new musical styles with the introduction of the concerto, the sonata, and the opera. I'm sure you guys have heard of some of those. And it stretched the boundaries of what was heard before this point. And the two words that can best describe the Baroque period are tonality and contrast. So the Baroque period is when the tonality we are familiar today becomes established. And by tonality, we mean like major or minor keys. So before then, they didn't have those. Baroque music was also characterized by an increased emphasis on contrast. This was shown in a lot of ways, such as loud versus quiet dynamics, solo versus ensemble pieces, and then different instrument sounds. And the Baroque period is considered to have ended after the death of Bach in 1750. Okay, so these are some instruments of the Baroque period. They're very interesting. So first is the harpsichord. It's kind of like the standout instrument of the Baroque era. It kind of looks like a piano, but the strings are plucked instead of being hit by a hammer like in a piano. And you'll see in a moment why the harpsichord is pretty important to the Baroque era. Another important instrument was the pipe organ. This is a picture of a pipe organ, and here, once class is over, you can click on this link to listen to a recording of Bach's Toccata and Fugue on, I think that's the harpsichord. So other instruments in the Baroque era include the viola, recorders, and lutes or flutes from the Renaissance. And the Renaissance is the period before the Baroque era, so of course some of the stuff there carried over. Okay, so this is kind of like what to pay attention to in this history lesson. So music in the Baroque period was characterized by a polyphonic texture. So that means there's basically two or more separate melodies which are interchanged to create the music. And these melodies are passed between the parts, such as treble and bass, and each part has equal importance to the whole piece. So for example, this is one of Bach's inventions, if you guys recognize it. And the melody starts off in the treble clef, but it quickly goes into the bass clef. And that's a characteristic that you don't really see in like Mozart's music or any music after the Baroque era. So this is pretty important. It's polyphonic texture. Okay, and then B is the use of ornamentation. And that means like trills and that kind of stuff. So composers included many trills, mordents, and other ornaments in their music. And performers could also add their own ornaments at appropriate places in the music. Okay, 3 more characteristics. The third one is improvisation, which means that you're kind of like creating the piece off your mind. So the performer was free to improvise sections of music, and this included the ornamentation mentioned above, like they could just put in trills and stuff whenever they want, but it also included playing cadenzas, which are entire sections of music that the performer created, and usually after a cadence, which we just learned about. So if you play any piano concertos and your teacher asks you to learn this cadenza, that's what they mean. Okay, D is called figured bass. This is another type of improvisation in Baroque music, and the performer was given an outline of the chord progressions of a composition. Yeah, you guys know what figured bass is. It's basically the Roman numerals. So if you write out those Roman numerals, it's much easier than writing out the whole chord, and that's what people use to improvise stuff. And then lastly, this one's pretty important too, it's terrace dynamics. Because much of the music from the Baroque period was written for the harpsichord, and the harpsichord had no ability of doing like crescendos or decrescendos, performers would use terrace dynamics, which mean that they would like go from loud to medium loud to soft. Wait, from what am I saying? From soft to medium loud to loud instead of crescendoing. And I've gotten multiple comments from judges in piano competitions that, like for my Baroque pieces, I should use more terrace dynamics. So these are all very important characteristics to know when you're playing music from this era. So that's for the piano, but other instruments such as the violin did create true crescendos during the Baroque period. Okay, so that's all for characteristics. And then this is an example of figured bass. Like I said, we've already learned this before. Basically, they're just writing down these Roman numerals, and then the performer could improvise like different inversions of that chord while they're performing. Okay, Ifan, you can do this part.
Okay, so the Concerto Grosso, Sonata, Suite, and Opera came into focus in the Baroque period. The Concerto Grosso is an earlier form of the concerto. It was an antiphonal, or had 2 groups of players alternately playing the music. In the Concerto Grosso, a small group of string instruments alternated or contrasted with a larger group. And then the sonata is usually written for a solo instrument with an accompaniment. Sonatas were usually made up of different movements. So if you were to grab a random sonata, you would see like movement 1, movement 2, movement 3. There might be 4, 5, 6, but the suite was a very popular form of Baroque music. It was a series of dances usually made up by the Allemande, Courante, Sarabande, and Gigue. These 4 were the standard, but they also sometimes include a minuet or fugue. And you can see a lot of those in Bach's partitas. And then opera and church music were popular forms of vocal music during the Baroque period. And then these 3 you can explore after class and just like listen to it. They're really good. I really like them. Okay, so on to the composers of the Baroque period, sorry. So you probably heard of Bach. He was a giant of the Baroque period. He composed an astonishing 1,128 compositions in his lifetime, and he wrote music in all the major or minor keys. So if I'm playing the well-tempered clavier, and there's like 24, and they're all in different keys, which is it's really cool. And then there's Handel and Corelli, are also famous composers of the Baroque period. They were notable composers of the concerto grosso. And then Vivaldi was another key composer in the Baroque period. And most of you, or some of you guys, probably heard of his Four Seasons. Other notable composers included Pachelbel, Perkel, Albinoni, and Telemann.
Okay, we only have 2 minutes left, so we're probably gonna save most of this for the review session. But we can do the first 2 if you want, I guess, to like warm up. So if that's okay with all of you, we can either do this or like go over a bit of the homework. What do you guys want to do? If there's no preference, then we'll just do this. Okay. Oh, that's 9, so I'm gonna go to 11. Okay, so this is like the same exercise that we did a couple weeks ago, but it's very important, so we're gonna keep doing this. So basically, if you remember types of intervals, we have major, minor, perfect, diminished, augmented, but this video doesn't really have many augmented and diminished ones. And then just write the interval number as well. So we'll just do the first 2. Okay, did everyone get that? As soon as you know the answer, you can type it in the chat. So I'll do it one more time since we haven't done this in a while. So the answer is a minor 6th. This is not a perfect 5th because that would be C.
Sound good. Sound happy.
Really? Sounded kind of sad to me. But
yeah. No, I thought like I said perfect fifths sound happy, like very happy. They're perfect.
Yeah, this one sounds kind of off. Let's listen to it again. So the first note was C and the second note was A flat. So that would be a minor 6th. Okay, so we're out of time for today, but we're gonna share the slide so you can do as many of these as you want. And the answers are on the next slide, so if you want practice, don't look at it, but if you need help, you can always look at the answers. And yeah, if you guys forget, you can always look back at like the interval slides just to refresh your memory on the different interval qualities. And the way to tell intervals, just try like, once you hear the 2 notes, try spacing out what you hear between them. And I think as long as you keep practicing, you'll get better at it. Yeah, those are the answers. Okay, and like a few weeks ago, we have a homework help slide since we had a lot of information. So this is just all we learned today on one slide. And then this is vocabulary. We don't really like test vocabulary, but we just put this here to keep all of the terms we learned in the class in one place. So you can always refer to here, or you can search up these words to learn more about them. Okay, does anyone have any more questions for me and Ifan? Okay, if not, then good job to everyone today. Good job for finishing your homework last week, and we will see you all on Saturday. Thank you guys. Bye.